Imagine a world without a future. Not a world destroyed by war or some sudden cataclysm, but one that is simply fading away. It began as a whisper, a statistical anomaly that grew into a global headline, and then a terrifying, unshakable reality. For 50 years, not a single child has been born on Earth. They call it the Great Silence. The once ceaseless, vibrant hum of a growing civilization has been replaced by a profound and deepening quiet. The morning rush hour is a distant memory. The sprawling arteries of our once teeming cities now lie dormant, their purpose dwindling with each passing day as the last generation of drivers ages out. We are a species living in the long twilight, collectively watching the sun set on our own existence. The first and most haunting casualties of this silence were the sounds of childhood. The laughter that once filled parks, the shouts from a neighborhood game, the collective chatter of a schoolyard, all vanished, leaving a void that echoes louder than any sound. Playgrounds, once arenas of boundless energy, now stand as solemn monuments to a future that was promised but never delivered. A single rusted swing moves in the wind, a lonely, creaking metronome counting out the final moments of our species. The schools, the great factories of the future, were the first major institutions to close their doors for good. Their hallways, once bustling with the chaotic promise of the next generation, now stand as hollow cathedrals of memory. Lockers hold the forgotten relics of the last children, their dusty surfaces a testament to a promise that could no longer be kept. Public life has been irrevocably altered. The grand plazas and squares designed for gatherings and celebration now feel cavernous and alienating, their scale a mockery of our diminished and aging population. Society has reconfigured itself entirely. The industries of youth, toys, education, pediatric medicine vanished within a single brutal decade. In their place, a booming economy of geriatrics, nostalgia technologies, and palliative care. Inside the abandoned classrooms, time itself seems frozen. A calendar bleached by the sun is forever stuck on a month from decades ago, marking the year the last school bell rang for the last time. Ivy creeps through broken windows, a quiet green tide, as nature slowly reclaims the spaces we built for a future that never arrived. We are a world of caretakers, tending to the elderly, to our decaying infrastructure, and to our collective memories. But we are also a world of ghosts, haunted by the children we never had. We see their specters in the overgrown playgrounds, in the empty car seats gathering dust in garages, in the vacant rooms of our homes. Humanity has become a living museum of itself, each person an exhibit of a time when we had heirs to our world. So what happens to the human spirit when it has nowhere to go? What becomes of art, of science, of love when you know you are the last? This is the story of the final generation, the story of how humanity faces the end, not with a bang, but with a long, drawn-out whisper. It began not with a bang, but with a whisper. A statistical anomaly noticed by a handful of demographers, a slight, almost imperceptible dip in global birth rates. At first, it was dismissed. Experts pointed to economic downturns, shifting social priorities, and the natural ebb and flow of human populations. News reports flickered across screens, sandwiched between political scandals and market forecasts, treating it as little more than a curiosity. The world, busy with its own immediate concerns, paid little attention. The silence was growing, but no one was listening yet. Behind the closed doors of laboratories and research institutions, however, that whisper was becoming a roar. Scientists from every discipline were mobilized in an unprecedented global effort. Geneticists sequenced genomes, endocrinologists analyzed hormonal data, and epidemiologists traced patterns, all searching for a cause. They looked for a virus, a chemical contaminant, an environmental trigger, some tangible enemy to fight, but every test came back negative. Every hypothesis led to a dead end. The phenomenon, which they began to call global human sterility syndrome, defied all known biological and medical principles. They were facing a perfect invisible wall. The data, however, was undeniable. On screens in government offices and university halls, the trend lines told a terrifying story. What was once a gentle slope was now a cliff face. The heat maps of global birth rates, once vibrant with color, were cooling to a uniform desolate blue. The term, the Great Silence, entered the public lexicon. It was no longer an abstract concept for academics. It was a headline on every news channel, a topic of hushed, anxious conversations in homes around the world. The last generation of children was already in school, and there were no more on the way. The future, once a promise of continuity, had become a question mark. Finally, the world's leaders and health organizations were forced to address the public. At somber press conferences, they confirmed what many already feared. Humanity had, for reasons unknown, lost the ability to procreate. Panic was carefully managed, but a deep collective anxiety settled over the globe. The first changes were subtle, almost melancholic. The laughter in playgrounds began to fade, replaced by an eerie quiet. Maternity wards closed their doors, their equipment gathering dust. Schools consolidated, then closed altogether. The rhythm of life, once punctuated by the cries of newborns and the energy of youth, began to slow. The world was growing older, quieter. The twilight of humanity had begun. Schools remain silent. Playgrounds are overgrown. Humanity grows older, with fewer young people to support the aging population. Societies struggle to cope with the imbalance. Economies start to crumble. With no new workers entering the workforce, industries collapse. Cities that were once vibrant turn into ghost towns. Governments scramble to maintain order. The psychological impact is devastating. Humans long for connection, for the laughter of children that never comes. Depression and loneliness become widespread as society faces an uncertain future. Yet nature begins to reclaim the world. Without humans reproducing and consuming, forests expand, wildlife thrives, and cities slowly return to nature. Scientists desperately search for a cure. Fertility treatments and advanced technology are pushed to the limit, but the miracle of natural birth remains elusive. Humans adapt. Communities become tighter. Robots and machines take over labor. Humanity learns to survive, even as the population dwindles. The last generation of humans ages slowly. Memories of children, laughter, and family traditions live only in photographs and digital archives. After 50 years, the world falls silent. Humanity survives, but it is a shadow of what once was. The earth thrives, but without the future generations to continue our story. We are left with a question that echoes in the silent halls of our civilization. What would you do if you knew the world had no future children? If you knew with absolute certainty that yours was the last generation to walk this earth? The initial shock would give way to a profound collective grief, a mourning not for a person, but for a possibility, for every unborn scientist, artist, and dreamer. For the simple, beautiful chaos of a child's laughter, a sound that would become a fading echo, a ghost in our memory. How would you live in a world without tomorrow? Would you fall into despair, a quiet nihilism settling over the planet like a final winter? Or would you find a new, defiant purpose? Some did. They became the archivists, frantically documenting every facet of human existence, from the grandest symphonies to the recipe for a grandmother's bread. They built monuments of data, digital time capsules launched into the void, a message in a bottle cast into a cosmic ocean, hoping against hope that someone, somewhere, would one day know that we were here. Others became the revelers, embracing a radical hedonism. If this was the final act, they would make it a spectacle of light and sound, a celebration of the senses. They lived with an intensity born of finality, seeking beauty and connection in the fleeting moments. But for most, life became a quiet pilgrimage, a journey through the familiar landscapes of a world that was suddenly alien. The playgrounds fell silent, the swings swaying like pendulums marking a time that no longer mattered. Schools became museums of a forgotten age. The very concept of legacy was inverted. It was no longer about what we would leave behind for our children, but how we would honor the memory of having been children ourselves. We were forced to look back, to understand the immense, unrepeatable gift we had been given. In this twilight, did we become better? Did we finally learn compassion? When every life was one of a finite, dwindling number, its value became absolute. The last doctor, the last farmer, the last poet, each a treasure beyond measure. Perhaps this story, this thought experiment, is not about an imagined end. Perhaps it is a reminder, a stark and urgent whisper from a possible future. The future has always been fragile, a delicate tapestry woven from the threads of our choices. We are its guardians. The story of humanity is not yet finished. It is being written right now, in the choices we make, in the care we show for one another, and in the hope we hold for the children of a tomorrow that must be fought for. Every life matters, because every life is a promise of a future, a promise we cannot afford to break.